Okay, here goes. So we're back on air. This is part 2. To give a quick recap, we received an alert. Oh, don't want to spoil that too soon. Received an alert. Person opened a weaponized Word document that had a PowerShell that ran PowerShell, and it ran this weird string. So I've been spending the last week working on this, trying to figure out what exactly this is. The numbers and CTF experience kind of led me to believe that this is it's obfuscated somehow. So looking at the command quickly, it's saying string join, it's joining all that. And at the end, it's saying for each object, which means it's going to iterate through the whole string. This part actually would have made this a lot easier if I understood this from the beginning. And this is why I put emphasis on like studying the basics. So right here where it's saying character, that's kind of outside those brackets. And what it's doing is this is the piece that represents a string.
I don't think you're sharing the screen right now.
Oh, well, let me share the screen then. That might help.
I was like, which is the part that represents the brackets?
Oh, crap. Okay, hold on a second. Let's see.
So I was actually just checking the chat just to make sure.
Okay. Cool. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. So over here on the screen that I finally decided to share, I just did a quick recap. Here's what was ran. This person opened this document. That document opened this PowerShell command. And here's where we're at right here. So what it's doing right here, and this is where I started getting down the rabbit hole and reading about bitwise XORs. What this is doing is, are you familiar with bitwise XOR?
I am, yeah, from reversing stuff.
Okay. So basically what it's doing is these are decimal. These are decimal notation. These are decimal numbers, and what it's doing is it's going to do what bitwise XOR is each one of these, like this 57 right here. This is going to be given an XOR statement based on correct me if I'm wrong, the bit values, so or basically converted to binary.
Yep.
And the way this obfuscation works is it's decoding based on OX1D, which translates from hexadecimal to the number. And I'll get to that in a second. I wrote this out. So what this is doing for each one of these is it compares the number and this key, and for each one of the binary bits, if either one of them are there, it'll equal 1, and if it's not, and if they're both positive or both 1 or both a 0, then it's 0 because based on an OR, and that gives you your decoded number, and from there it's that whole thing is decoded as ASCII, and then that's going to produce what it is. Let's see. So over here. And this is me doing. So basically, my boss had the answer already, and I kind of like stumbled on the explanation of it. But once he gave me the code, which is down here, I ended up I wanted to get a better understanding of it. So what I did was line by line, look at the code and try and provide comments, and then from there, I wanted to. I kind of had something started going there. So I'll show you what this is in a command line.
So for people that focus on this stuff all the time, there's obviously resources that you can tap into to figure this stuff out. But to somebody who just sees this and they try to take a look at it, I mean, it's probably beyond something that someone would go out of their way to do.
For sure.
And it seems obvious to us, right? Because we hear about obfuscation all the time, and words like Zoring and bitwise operators and things like that are not uncommon. But definitely not a terrible technique for kind of tricking out, you know, the average person or the average sysadmin taking a look at this.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to run this, but I'm going to comment out the lines as I go, kind of give a better idea of what we're seeing here. And so the difference between what my boss sent me, or my coworker sent me, and what I did, he had it output into a text file. And this is where I started realizing, you know, when you're learning Python, you first start learning all the basics. Oh, I created hello world, made it iterate a bunch of times, or oh, here's a list, or here's an array. And then you'll buy a couple of books on Python, and you'll like basically copy and paste, whether it's manually or the long way, into your code and say, oh, okay, I just copied and pasted a port scanner in Black Hat Python. Now I'm going, but I don't know what this all means because I didn't get the basics in. And this is where some of the basic stuff in Python comes in handy. So if you take a look at his code, so he's got the variable defined, and then he's got this evil string that's got nothing in it, basically. And what's going to happen is the for loop, this for loop he created, is going to iterate through each of those strings, doing the decoding.
Mm-hmm.
And if you notice this is exactly what it looks like the character char XOR key.
Yeah,
it's just like it is in here. So had I known to look for known kind of what to expect when he was putting it together, this would have saved me a ton of time. Because basically I was trying to deobfuscate it one piece at a time, and that would made it a lot harder. The other thing too, so let's look through, there's code some more. So as being decoded, each string is being appended, that's the plus equals, to that string, to that evil string. And then the final step is writing it to a text file. So with open, plain text, payload, that's the name of the file. And then the W is a write, and it's writing as a P file. And then it writes to that string, it writes using the information from that string. So I got a lot of stuff reinforced with Python on top of this, which is kind of cool. And
great.
If you'll notice the top of the code, like there aren't any modules imported. This is all just straight up Python. And when I was going through this, like I started learning about the OR statements and AND statements and digging deeper, and I didn't realize this was already built in out of the box with Python. So with that, we're going to run my interpretation of this. And here we go. So the first thing you notice is this descrambled code.
Yeah, you may want to make that bigger. It's a little bit difficult even for me to see.
All right, let's see.
So yeah, the thing with the XOR key is interesting because I would have known that by looking at it.
Yeah.
That's just something you have to know by, looking at this stuff more frequently and doing more malware analysis.
For sure.
Bigger the better.
Yeah, there we go. So you notice this, but something's still not quite right about it. Let's see. That's the original thing I tried doing, and it didn't work out so well. And this all that it did was decode each of these, but the conversion wasn't necessarily right.
So if you want to take the thing, do you have copy and paste from inside and outside the VM?
Yeah.
So if you want to highlight anything or show it to us, you should probably move it, paste it outside the VM into a text doc because I can't really see it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So you can go through the next step, but yeah, once you get one more step in, it'd be good to do that.
For sure. So let's see. Because what I'm going to do.
I tried to verify that last time. I was trying to think, oh, if I can't see this, can everyone else see that? And I guess that was the case.
Yeah. So as you can see, and everything, and all the characters are kind of split weird. You see a bunch of weird stuff.
Yeah.
So this is basically boils down to the math I use for this.
Mm-hmm.
So you're noticing I have it joining each of those, and then for P and payload, and now coming out, but I'm gonna go to the next one. So this is gonna be this doing it the correct way that produced the actual results. So now, if you take a look at it, it does look like it makes a lot of sense. But if you notice here where it's saying that it's got a bunch of letters and then there's some words in here. There's new object, net web client, variable, and oh, HTTP. You got one website.
So is this the partially deobfuscated or the fully deobfuscated?
It's fully deobfuscated.
Oh, okay. So go ahead and copy that and go ahead and paste that into your regular window so I can see what's going on here. So yeah, I guess I would say one of the indicators would be when you start seeing actual URIs and URLs, whichever, that would be the point where you know you're actually getting somewhere with the deobfuscation.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's tricky with the VM sizing.
Yeah. There we go. So now this goes back to one is learning the basic things in Python too. So let's take a look at this line right here. So it's printing it, and it's printing this space, and then it's going to join each of those, or it's going to join that calculation based on each character in the payload right here.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I did different is one little thing. Oops, not enter. Is just change the output. Now it'll make sense. So run that again. Now it looks a lot different.
Definitely.
Let me take that first line out where I just commented what I was going to do. There. There we go. Now we've got something much different here.
So yeah, select that, throw it into a text editor in your regular box so we can see what we got going on.
Okay.
Do you have copy and paste back and forth from the VM?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would open it up in the OSX editor. Let me see if it's more clear.
Yeah, let me do this.
So I see something interesting already. I see that there's a part of the URI that says WordPress content, which something I've seen before, which is people will stage their payloads out of people's compromised WordPress accounts. Yeah. Or I've seen all kinds of stuff. I've seen car dealerships in other countries where it's compromised and they're staging out of there. I've seen like around like 2012, 2013, people would stage like kind of a JavaScript forwarder on people's websites. So basically when you went to load the page, if you had Java installed, then it would actually forward the request to another site that would actually stage it, and it would check for all the JavaScript stuff and everything. So it was basically like a simple little snippet that was like making a call, and if you didn't have if it wasn't going to run the JavaScript, then it wouldn't forward at all. But if it actually was, then it would forward to another site. So basically you'd get stopped at the first compromised site instead of even getting to the infrastructure.
Yep. Here's what we have here. Paste it on. There we go. Okay, got it all. So the funny thing about this, when we first got this alert and looked the sites up, it didn't show up on VirusTotal, and then within a couple of days, the Intel feeds were being updated, so we saw a lot more hits.
So zoom in on that a little bit.
Yeah, where's the zoom on this?
Probably if it's command plus sign.
Okay.
Is usually.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah,
so yeah,
better.
So definitely, yeah, I see a couple of sites that look kind of like that WordPress content one where there's they have a little bit of Perl in there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then one thing I noticed here was, so it's saying for the connection, it's running a try, and it says download file, looking for a star MSI. Maybe that's another variable starting to be seen. So it's looking for file types to download, it looks like.
Yeah, so it looks like it's setting up a new object with a web client. Usually web clients frequently used in some of this stuff. What I used to see is people would basically do like a first stage of PowerShell, and now it's obfuscated PowerShell.
Yeah.
And they would do that web client, or basically like a web cradle, to grab things and other executables once they actually were sitting on the system for a while. So there's different variations of it, but this one still seems kind of common. Like they have some compromised infrastructure. And like I said before, I've seen multiple situations. One where if it's going to run JavaScript, it checks to see if you have the JavaScript, or if it's going to run Java, like when Java applets were popular, it would do that. So it looks like this is like basically like a second stage that it's pulling down.
Yeah. This is a good one. Got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
You know what? Let's see what we can get out of it now. What else we can do with this? So, once again, and now last time we tried running the script, and we didn't get far. Thanks to Windows Defender. So now let's try it. Let's see. Better yet. So rather than running the script, we can just pull these out and go right to the site.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is open up Firefox, and I'm going to open up Burp over here.
So it should definitely be highlighted. If you're going to pull down malware from a site, you should know that you should just either have to burn or roll back that VM. I prefer to just completely burn the whole VM.
Yeah.
And there's always that rare chance that through the multiple stages of this that it can break out of a VM. It'd be a lot more rare, but I'd never put it past.
Yeah, for sure.
Downloading malicious code, how far it can actually go.
So while I'm getting Burp ready, I'll let that run.
So I figure over time, if we keep iterating over this and going back and forth, this is a case where you have something that you actually experience. But I think what we can move towards, if we do like a red versus blue thing, is we'll actually do the thing, and then we'll see how to actually detect it, and then all that, and we will stumble, but we'll figure out our way through, and we'll definitely learn a lot more about attacking and detecting.
For sure, let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even like it goes, the value of the rabbit hole. So all this started off as a simple alert I dealt with at work, and next thing you know, it's dealing with finding about a PowerShell obfuscator through following the information on the talks, learning a bit more about Python, and then getting my Burp Suite box set up. So normally, I've run Burp on the same box I'm doing any sort of web scanning from, but this time I'm running it to another VM. So little things like setting up the proxy for it was, I had struggled a little bit with that, which is interesting. So I ended up pointing it to this box. I was like, okay, cool.
So you're pointing your VM, your other VM, at a proxy that's inside your Kali Linux box, and it's another VM?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I definitely, as far as obfuscation goes too, something else we could test out is I watched the demo video for Metasploit. I think it was the last demo video. They do sprint demos, and they had actually a C obfuscator. So you could throw some C code at it. You can say the level of obfuscation, and it would scramble it up so that you can, write some things in C staters, or, things that download payloads, or just, simple things out of use or whatever it is. And you could scramble it up. That's definitely something I want to take a look at in the future. Yeah, tinkering around is definitely helped me expand my knowledge. That's what I always tell people, like when they ask me, about breaking in InfoSec or just generally like learning. It's like you just have to sit there and get in the mud yourself, and
for sure,
kind of watching other people's videos and duplicating. Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, that'll give you a bag of known tricks, but if you really want to get in there, it's always good to fumble around and just fail, and kind of get frustrated and maybe you ask somebody after a certain period of time, expand your knowledge a little bit more, and then you just get this back and forth going, especially with red-blue stuff. I mean, it's always good to learn more about the blue side.
Yep.
For me.
Let's see. Okay, that's working there. So there's that piece of it. And then in burp, if you want to add that proxy, actually, let's test this first. Okay, so you notice how it says proxy servers refusing connections?
Yeah.
One little setting. So all I had to do was add to the interface for this box.
And you added the specific IP?
Yep. Cool. Yeah, so on the other end for the Foxy proxy, you just point it to the IP address, the port. So they go in here.
Yeah, so typically people will run burp on their local computer, but some of the time you can't. Like if you're doing mobile phone stuff, you're not going to be able to run burp on the mobile phone. So that's when this comes into play also.
Yep. Or imagine if multiple people are trying to scan something.
Yeah, that's true. And that's another one of those cases where it's like, the generic way of hooking up to burp is widely known. But then when you get into, slight variation, suddenly, it becomes more difficult and questions come into play.
So now we're going to run that again. And here we go. Intercepts. So notice it works. So basically when you set it up on a remote box, you have to set up the proxy on your local box, and on the remote one, you're also setting up the additional listener that's specific to that IP or DNS entry. So here we go. So now we know that works. And in the case of VMs, probably on the same network.
Yep.
Just want to make sure this works before we start breaking it. And it looks like it's loading. All right, so first, yep, definitely passing it.
I would also recommend in most cases that you download stuff, at least with Tor at minimum.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing here?
No, I was just going to the Onion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to show web traffic working. So. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's the first URL. We're going to run through burp. So we have drop that packet. That's still from the Onion.
Probably be good to go through a bunch of burp stuff at some point. I know I keep saying I'm going to do that, but
for sure,
then I never end up getting a chance to do it. And I get questions about burp quite frequently.
Okay, more Java errors. Just keep going. There we go. Here it is. So.
So that's the first site that's listed?
Yeah. Yeah, I have an expired ESET running on here. Let's go to that anyway. Actually, the expired ESET's running on the host machine, so it's even more interesting. Right.
Yeah, so I've seen in the past that there's sometimes there would be like a one-time cookie inside of the second stager, just in case, you know, somebody tries to analyze.
Yeah.
I can't remember what other things I've seen. I don't think they don't usually use authentication because then you can just use the authentication. But I've seen a few different times where I can only hit those site one time.
Let's see. War resort. Okay. Oh man, another one. Let's see what this does. Now it's disabled. So we try and load it again. Yep. Huh.
So it's blocking you from downloading it?
Yep.
So what about the other one? I know there's another one on there.
Okay. That one looks good. The WordPress one.
So if you actually end up pulling down an executable, which I think the second one's an executable, it might be interesting for us to actually pick that one apart.
Oh, the ZZD one?
Yeah, it might be interesting to pull that down to Binja carefully.
All right.
So once we get that executable, if it's meant for Windows, we can run file on it. If it's meant for Windows, we can probably pretty safely mess around with it.
Yep.
Interesting.
Still loading.
So what you're doing right now is what I used to do, and I ended up getting like a pretty good repository of malware. And so over time, you just build up like all these executables and all these payloads and all these different things.
Wow.
That are pretty interesting, yeah.
I did it at a much more, I've been doing it at a much more risky level where I'd fix people's computers, and I still have the USB stick, but basically anytime I'd find infected files, I'd have this red USB stick that I'd put them on. I still have it, I just haven't plugged in anything yet. Still loading.
Someone just asked me an interesting question. What is a green team? I hear it's management on Twitter. My understanding of a green team is that it fixes systemic issues. If you keep seeing something over and over again. But I could be wrong about that.
I hadn't heard of that. I'm not too familiar with that term.
Yeah. And related to all this, I'm going to look that up real quick. Green team.
I've even heard of gold teams where it's more focused on audit.
Yeah. Let's see. Green team. All right. No, that's definitely not the definition. What is a corporate green team anyways? Either it did get something or it didn't get something. Let's try this WordPress site. So if I were to guess correctly, did they use multiple sites on the premise of them possibly having multiple places that were compromised to get the payload from, that is? Do they use multiple sites?
So notice how in the output or the obfuscated script, it's pointing to multiple sites. Is this a chance? Is this a possibility that they maybe posted the malware on these different domains that were compromised?
Yeah. So the highest, if you want to have the highest probability of pulling down that second executable, and one of the sites gets blocked, you want to have multiple. Like for example, when you're building a payload, for example, in Cobalt Strike, you can do multiple DNS records inside of there, so it will continue until it actually finds one of them, and then. I believe with DNS records, you can also, well, if the DNS gets blocked, you're kind of shit out of luck at that point.
Mhm.
But if you have any kind of forwarder or any kind of situation where you're forwarding to your infrastructure as a secondary staging, then you're going to want to have maybe multiple forwarders so that you can have, you know, more chances of still getting that executable if it gets blocked, or you're just going to want to have multiple websites.
Mm.
So I don't know what it is in this case. We haven't picked at the payload enough, but
Yeah.
it seems like if there's multiple back to back, that might be what it is. But I'd have to take a closer look.
Yeah. Let's see. Tried that one first. That one. That one.
What are they all getting? They're getting blocked.
Yeah.
It's blocking it on their end.
You know, I don't think it's it may be because let's see.
I wonder if those are in virus total. If you throw the full length of those things in virus total and see.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Have already gotten hit.
Yeah.
You could also just try straight curling them just to see what happens.
Okay.
Like, do you have a full length one that includes the executable? Because the way it's obfuscated, I think what it's trying to do, and I'd have to check it again in your text editor, is I think it's trying to reach the site. But you see how after all a bunch of the stuff in the splitting, it says .exe?
Yeah.
So go to one of the sites real quick.
Hmm?
And then let me take a closer look at the payload, because I think we might be missing a part of it. I think you might be blocked from the part you're going to, but we may need to piece together other parts of this payload to get the actual executable.
Yeah.
So let me see the payload real quick on screen.
All
right. In the text editor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I can see it better.
Let's see.
I could see it much better in the Mac.
Oh, okay.
If you still have that open.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. There we go.
Cool. So it looks like tries to do the web client. It's the 0A, I believe, is a return character. So it's separating that one. And then one of them looks like it's a .pl, but I think, oh, I was wrong. That's not Perl. That's just the end of the
domain
URL. Split. And
I'm actually gonna split this up a bit. So let's do this.
Yeah. So I think if I'm correct,
the @ sign looks like a separator here. Yeah, because each one of those is @ sign.
Yeah. So it sort of looks like, well, they're all going into, I think the /FK5J is part of that one, this Hunter King one.
Yeah.
And then there's a colon, EG equals 707 temp plus EAG executable. Download start process. So it looks like it's downloading an executable and then actually starting it. But I think what we have to do is we have to get to those sites and actually get. So I think if you looked up one of those on VirusTotal, it may actually tell you some of the paths that you need. I think the 0A might not be part of it, but actually that might be a randomly generated thing, so we can find out.
Let's see.
Split 0. Environment temp EAG exe. Okay, so none of those look like they're actually downloading a file.
Yep.
Yeah, so it definitely is. Although the actual sample, I don't think we'd have access to unless we were signed in. It looks like, okay, so it is that 0A thing, and then it shows you the IP, it shows you what's returning. It doesn't show
file name.
Yeah, so that's probably the file name. So you might want to see if you can add that to the end of the URL.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of what I was looking for. So yeah, that particular one, and then add the .exe to the end of it. Because you're going to be blocked from everything else except for just being able to grab that
okay.
file.
So, find that. Here we go.
So just a wild guess.
Go for that. Didn't do that.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty much what we're missing. We're missing the part of like what the actual file is.
Yeah. Let's see.
So let's read it closer. So dot split et is we kind of understand that part because it's splitting all of the URLs by et, and then it's doing a variable eag equals 707, and then it's splitting again. I don't know what that is exactly yet. And then nwc environment variable temp plus eag.exe. It's possible the executable is called 707.exe if you want to try to add that to the end. I could be wrong about that, but I'm trying to logically pick this apart here. It also might be the case that it's just all blocked now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what what I was thinking is when we first discovered this alert, there was almost nothing on VirusTotal on those sites.
So it's not your system that has ESET on it; it's their system.
Okay, yeah. Oh, so it's looking at based on what this feed probably has.
Yeah. So if you have ESET on this system, you might want to disable it.
Yeah, I already did that earlier.
Okay, so I wonder if there's a plugin in the browser. Like try to do the same thing, but do it from another site. Okay. I'm sorry, from another browser, because it looks like ESET is actually blocking it from you downloading it. Yeah. Which I would have to suspect that Chrome would do a similar thing once something's flagged.
Let's do Internet Explorer.
Now, in this case, we could probably just curl these websites because there's not going to be ESET blocking it and see what actually happens.
Yeah.
And VirusTotal should also tell us what it actually did to pull down that payload. So I don't know if you have curl on there.
Not on the Windows box. Let's see. Do I? Nope. That real quick.
So yeah, that would be a case where it might be good to have like Sigwin or the Windows subsystem bash thing.
How do we get a tar file in Windows
open? You should be able to. Well, I think 7-zip can handle that.
Definitely have that on here.
So let me take a look real quick here. And VirusTotal myself and see how they're pulling this down. URL. All right, let me look at the very first one. Okay, so it's marked right away. Let's check out the details real quick. So the final URL is actually that. And then it looks like it's when you go to that, it's trying to send down that particular code. So if I was actually to curl this right now, real quick, see if I get the thing that I'm expecting. Yeah, this one could actually be taken down already. Connection refused. So it says that the final URL is that/zzd. So it looks like enough things have brought attention to it for it to actually just have stopped.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that if we sign in, which I'll sign in right now, we can actually get that executable. Let me sign in real quick here. Use my loud ass keyboard. So at some point, I think it'd be cool if we write our own stagers and stuff to see what gets flagged.
Yeah.
That would be really interesting. All right, community comments, details. So there's some information. So it has a list. It says downloaded files. There's a whole bunch of different files. There were some doc files, some executable files. They were all Win32 exes. MS Word documents were the other ones. Most of them were found to be infected. If you check this out right here, I'll let you check it out on your screen here.
Yeah.
Gives us some more information about each one. And then I think, if I'm correct, if you click on the actual executable, now this is the executable name in VirusTotal. Don't anyone actually click the executable. You can see when you're signed in the details. Let's look at it on your screen because I can't see my screen. So when you go down, you see the file, hopefully.
URL, download a file.
Yeah, so pick one of the executables. So if you were in like a position as a blue teamer, or this would basically what I would try to do is like, and what I used to do is click this executable. It's also kind of a little bit of a safer way to do it. Malware used to be a really good site. MALW.
Oh, WR.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to that site.
Yeah, I remember having an account on there because it was up for a while, and then around like 2017, it was gone.
Yeah, so it looks like if you click one of those executables, I saw some really cool stuff. I don't know if you'll see this, but I see something called relations.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so if you're not signed in, yeah, you see that relation. So you'll see inside of details, it'll tell us the file name. File is not signed. It'll say how big each section is of the executable, the things that it imports. I don't know if you can see that by looking down the list. So if you keep going down, yeah, it'll tell you the things that it imports. It'll tell you other pieces of information that might be relevant to you, making sure you don't have this on your system. Gives you other interesting stuff. I wonder what this relations thing is, though. I've actually never seen that. Oh, that's cool. Go ahead and check that out.
Right.
So even if you had only pulled one string out of this thing, go up to the top. There's a new tab that I haven't seen yet called Relations.
Oh, okay.
And it tells you other sites that it's related to. So it looks like this, looks like this executable has been pulled down by multiple sites. And two of those are the ones that we were actually looking at.
Yep.
Which is really cool. Shows a graph summary. Something about a zip file being scanned from some of these sites. Let's see what else. Behavior. It shows you the files that it tried to open and then the registry keys that it tried to edit. Wow, which is really cool. So it looks like it tried to do an image file execution option, which, if I'm correct, is something that runs before you run a file. There's the image file execution option, which runs before the process is handed off, before control is handed from the kernel to the process. The things that are in image file execution will run. So I don't know. I'll have to double check this, but it's almost like this like infinite backdoor that like never went away. And I think I actually tested this when I was doing a persistence mechanism.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. The tab that I was on was behavior.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm on a tab. Yeah.
And this was a cool thing because I put this image file, the first one, image file execution option, and again, I'll have to double check this, into the virus, the antivirus. And that means it wouldn't scan its own process. So it was a really good form of persistence. You had to have admin on the box already.
Yeah.
But it was something that what's really stop it from getting detected. Like for the time that I rolled that, it wasn't getting detected at all. Yeah. And someone wrote an article about it, and I think it went really under the radar. Let me see if I could find that article. Image file execution options.
I'm gonna check out community tab while you're doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, safe, unsafe. I don't remember. The last time I really dug deep in Powershell, I don't remember getting into all this. It was before they changed everything up.
Yeah, I haven't seen this before. Oh, it was called Double Agent. So it was something that not a lot of people saw, but you do modify the image file execution option, and then there's the process, and then inside of there you can put a DLL or an executable. It looks like in this case, it looks like it moved an executable into there. Yeah. I was only aware of being able to put a DLL there. So obviously this has been further weaponized, and I always thought it was a good kind of persistence mechanism, but I didn't really hear anybody talking about it. So yeah, that's kind of cool. Another interesting way to handle that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a good exercise in between getting the alert, acting on it, and then this is ideal. This is an ideal situation of being able to break down and reverse what's going on with the alert. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, if you have a company that can afford a SOC, hey, great, you have time to do the stuff that can triage this work out. But a lot of times, you might have a really small staff because of a lot of reasons we all talk about and ran about in the community.
Yeah,
and attackers don't have that constraint. They're just like, go, 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 go. What's a production? I don't know what your mission critical thing is. Don't care. Yeah. But defending it, this is the part where it gets challenging because you're dealing with projects and all this other stuff on the daily and other alerts that may or may not be as important or even more important.
Yeah.
Or something like, hey, in a really important end user clicked on a link, and you're going down that rabbit hole when you could be focusing on this stuff. And going through this exercise from end to end, from the getting the alert to seeing what happened to it and what it's going to do and de-obfuscating everything, all those steps are very important. And it's something I encourage people coming in if they're looking on the defensive side, or as most of us coming from the operations world instinctively are, this is where the value comes in and also where the challenge is.
Yeah, that's where I did that too. Like I basically did all the analysis stuff when I was a sysadmin and spent time in here. And I just started seeing patterns like, okay, well, these, executables are more frequently used by, malware, and it'd be groupings. It'd be groupings, and it would be like, surprisingly, like with the PowerShell staging thing, the obfuscation wasn't really as much before, but it was very similar. And it seems to not have changed. I mean, it's that PowerShell first stage trying to pull down the second stage executable.
For sure.
Definitely really interesting. This whole session represented kind of what one would do in that situation. So what did you guys end up doing to make sure that you were clean?
A couple things. We contacted the end user. It was already blocked on our controls in CrowdStrike. But there's a lot more, a lot of the following up. We wanted to take a look at the machine for a little bit and look at any activity. The next thing you do, obviously, would be maybe adding those URLs to block list. But there's the thing I'm thinking is, okay, let's just say you look at the obfuscated code, and you don't necessarily have time to solve it right away. You're busy. You might get pulled into something else. Yeah. It's a good thing I'm not a one-man army, and we have a good, pretty effective team that can divvy up the task and do this stuff. A lot of what I've done is some of the tier 1/2 triage and getting this information and go, oh, this is something we should look at. And as we had time to dig, we ended up getting more information out of it. And like I said, when we first discovered this alert, nothing was on virus total on URLs even. There were no hits on it. And then a week later, there were a bunch of hits on it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, when they're going after that, like kind of first round, that's when they're going to do something that's not really detected at first. So that's where they have to start with compromising some domains that are not blacklisted at that point, or basically moved on to one of these lists where they're being flagged as malicious.
Yep.
And then from there, obviously, they have to build some kind of executable that won't be automatically detected by antivirus. So like you said, when you first tapped into it, no one really considered it. Not many of them considered it bad, but I think at some point one detects it, right? And then it just blows the whole thing from their point of view.
Yeah. So like when I saw, looking at the alert, the obvious tells were this right here when it was running PowerShell. When word triggers when word trigger PowerShell to run, that instantly told me, okay, this is a thing. But I didn't reach the leap of being able to understand all this. I knew this was something that had to be obfuscated. So in the time between discovering the alert and deobfuscating information, which would be step 2, and then step 3, maybe adding those URLs to block list, our internal block list, there's gaps in between that time. And if you look at the name of the file, okay, greeting card July 4th. So chances are this was right before 4th of July. And had this happened maybe on a Friday or 4th of July was on a week closer to a weekend, it could have easily gone a couple of days without being noticed. And then, and looking at the title, greeting card 4th of July. I imagine there's a lot of places in government or DoD spaces where you would target this to, or people that are patriotic, obviously, and targeting towards. If 4th of July hadn't happened on a Wednesday this year, they probably would have gotten better results from the attacker's perspective.
And it makes you wonder if they kind of assumed that IT or whoever was out during the 4th of July, and that anybody who clicked on this, they'd probably get a couple clear days.
Yep.
Really, really interesting.
Well,
nice.
We're almost up to an hour this time.
Yeah, we're getting up there pretty quickly. Actually, I think the more we dig into this, like, we'll want to get to the point where we're dropping our own stagers and whatnot, and
for sure,
maybe building some C executables and trying that other deobfuscator that I saw on the Metasploit thing, and just trying different parts, like the PowerShell part, obfuscating stuff, seeing what picks it up, executables, seeing if we can run them with the antivirus on and whether or not they get picked up.
Yep.
So we'll just keep moving into this. It's definitely up to you if you have more stuff you want to show today.
Okay. On this topic, not necessarily. I think we covered a lot of ground, but there's a few other things I'm thinking I'll do next week, like going back to basics, some of the stuff in Python and going through some tools, real basic stuff.
Yeah, I kind of like going back and filling in some of the gaps with smaller videos that talk about like that simple stuff. I definitely want to go back, do some burp stuff, some Python, more Python stuff would be good. I think some full coding sessions would be really good too, to fill in like anything. I mean, I try to stick to like what's actually relevant to doing the job.
For sure.
So there's also some other stuff related to when we chatted with Tech about memory protection stuff that I think really gets glossed over, like in videos. Are like, hey, just copy and paste this memory thing in here and that'll remove all protections. But I'm going to try to break down like what all those memory protections are.
Sure.
Awesome.
And there we go. So I'm back on. Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty good exercise. What I'm going to do for future videos, I think we talked about this offline.
Yeah.
Is like, for instance, instead of trying to crank out X amount of Binary Ninja videos and sticking to one topic, I'm just going to do something every week, and as it fits into whatever context for Haxcellent, or if it's a Binary Ninja video that we're doing on Haxcellent or we use it, I'm going to add it to that playlist. So future updates, folks, will come through the playlist subscriptions, and so please subscribe and spread the word around. More content to come.
Awesome.
Cool. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for now, and then if you have any questions, feel free to leave in the comments. Feel free to subscribe and keep passing the word. If you have suggestions for future shows, feel free to fire them up. Hit me up on Twitter. Take care.
See you later.